All right, so today we're diving into some really heavy stuff. The story of Sylvia Likens back in 1965 in Indianapolis. It's one of those cases that sticks with you. And we've got a lot of information here, like a lot about the families involved and how everything just went so terribly wrong.
Yeah, it's rough stuff. We're talking about the Likens family, the Baniszewski family, and what happened when Sylvia and her sister Jenny ended up living with Gertrude Baniszewski. So buckle up because this one's a tough one, but we're going to do our best to go through it carefully.
Yeah, it's definitely important to understand the context here. Both of these families, the Likens and the Baniszewskis, they were struggling, like financially. And Gertrude Baniszewski, she was 36 at the time, had a whole lot on her plate.
Oh yeah, 2 divorces, 7 kids, 6 miscarriages, and she was dealing with poverty, she had chronic asthma and even clinical depression. It was a lot.
Wow, that's a lot for anyone to handle. So, could you paint a picture of what life was like in the Baniszewski home?
Well, they were living at 3850 East New York Street, and their house was super overcrowded, not enough beds, no working stove. They were basically living on bread and crackers, maybe some soup every now and then. And they didn't even have enough utensils to go around.
That's really tough. So 8 people crammed into this house, struggling to get by. And just to be clear, we're talking about Gertrude and her kids. Paula, who was 17, Stephanie 15, John Jr. at 12, Marie 11, Shirley 10, James was 8, and then little Dennis, he was only 1.
Right. So, already a very chaotic environment, even before Sylvia and Jenny entered the picture.
Right. Now, the Likens family, they were also dealing with financial strain, but their situation was a bit different. Lester and Betty Likens had 5 kids, Daniel and Diana, who were 18-year-old twins. Diana was already married, then 16-year-old Sylvia, and the 15-year-old twins, Benny and Jenny.
And Lester, he was working selling candy and stuff at carnivals, traveling a lot with his sons.
Right. And Betty, she was separated from Lester for a while, and she was living in Indianapolis with Sylvia and Jenny, trying to make ends meet by babysitting and collecting bottles for money. And on top of that, Jenny had polio and had to wear a leg brace, which made Sylvia super protective of her younger sister.
Oh, yeah, that protectiveness is something that comes up a lot in this story.
It seems like it might have been a factor in what happened later. So in July of 1965, Betty Likens got arrested for shoplifting, leaving Sylvia and Jenny alone in Indianapolis. And that's how they ended up at the Baniszewski house.
Hmm.
Right? They knew Paula from school.
Right. And it seems like they went there just looking for, maybe some company or something. But then Gertrude found out about their situation and offered to let them stay the night.
So then the next day, their dad, Lester, he finds them there, and he tells them that he and Betty have gotten back together and they're going to be traveling with the carnival. And so he makes this arrangement with Gertrude to take care of Sylvia and Jenny for $20 a week. And honestly, it's kind of shocking that he didn't really seem to check out the situation at Gertrude's house more thoroughly.
Yeah, it does seem like a major oversight, especially knowing what we know now. But anyway, the first week or so went by okay, from what we can tell. But then Lester's first payment was late.
And that's when things took a dark turn, right?
Yeah, Gertrude completely flipped out. She just started screaming about having to take care of these girls without getting paid. And it escalated really quickly. She dragged Sylvia and Jenny into a bedroom and started beating them with this wooden paddle.
Oh, gosh. And this wasn't like a one-time thing, was it?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
There was this other incident with, of all things, candy. Sylvia and Jenny had collected some bottles, got some money for them, and used it to buy candy.
It was pretty harmless.
You'd think so. But Gertrude found out about it and accused them of stealing. And Sylvia tried to explain that they'd earned the money, but Gertrude just didn't listen. She just beat them again.
So from a late payment to candy, it seems like anything could set Gertrude off. Were there other incidents like this?
Oh, yeah. And the next one, well, it's where we start to see Gertrude's kids getting involved. They were all at a church social, and apparently Sylvia ate a lot of food there. And when they got home for dinner, Gertrude made Sylvia eat this hot dog that had been passed around the table, with each of her kids putting on whatever condiments and spices they wanted.
Wow, that's just cruel. And she made her eat the whole thing.
Yeah, and then Sylvia threw up, and then Gertrude made her eat her own vomit. It was horrible. It's like the abuse was becoming more about humiliation and getting everyone else involved in it.
It's just sickening. And we know that Lester and Betty visited their daughters twice during those first few weeks. But neither Sylvia nor Jenny told them about what was happening.
Yeah, it's likely they were too scared to say anything. They probably thought it would just make things worse.
Makes sense, sadly. So at this point, it's already a terrible situation. But it seems like things shifted even more in August, right?
Yeah, August is when things got really, really bad, especially for Sylvia. It seems like she became the main target of Gertrude's abuse. Now, some people think it was because Sylvia was trying to protect Jenny, that she was taking the brunt of the abuse for her sister.
That's heartbreaking, but it also makes sense given how close they were.
Right. But there's also this specific incident that seems to have been a major turning point. Gertrude overheard Sylvia talking about lying in bed with her boyfriend. And well, she just completely lost it.
And just to be clear, the autopsy later proved that Sylvia was a virgin, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gertrude's assumption was totally wrong. But that didn't stop her from reacting in a really brutal way. She started calling Sylvia a prostitute in front of everyone. She even claimed that Sylvia was pregnant just from being touched by a boy. And then she started kicking Sylvia in the groin over and over.
That's just horrific. And those kicks, they cause serious damage, right?
Yeah, the autopsy report showed that Sylvia had severe vaginal mutilation from those attacks.
Yeah.
Like, the entrance was practically fused shut. It was that bad.
It's just hard to fathom that level of rage and violence. Do we have any idea what might have driven Gertrude to do something like that?
Well, there are a few theories. Maybe she was jealous of Sylvia's youth and the fact she was attractive. Or maybe she saw Sylvia as a sort of stand-in for Paula, her own daughter, who was pregnant at the time.
It's like she was taking out all her anger and frustration on Sylvia.
Exactly. And Sylvia, she wasn't just going to take the abuse lying down. She started spreading rumors about Paula and Stephanie at school.
I guess that's understandable in a way, but it also seems like it just made things worse.
Oh, yeah. Stephanie's boyfriend, Coy Hubbard, heard those rumors, and he came to the house and beat Sylvia up. And get this, Gertrude was right there, and she actually encouraged him to do it.
That's just unbelievable. She was basically giving him permission to assault Sylvia.
It's truly awful. And after that, Coy Hubbard was basically coming over to the house all the time and using Sylvia to practice his judo moves. He was throwing her against walls onto the floor. It was terrible.
So at this point, it's not just Gertrude. Her kids are involved, neighborhood kids are coming over. It's like Sylvia was just this target for everyone's cruelty.
Yeah, and Gertrude was actually encouraging it. She'd spread lies about Sylvia to other kids in the neighborhood just to get them riled up and make them want to hurt her. It's like she was orchestrating the whole thing.
Oh my God. And it gets even worse, right? There was the 4 strip teases.
Yeah. Local boys would pay to watch Sylvia undress, and there were at least 2 times when she was forced to masturbate with a Coke bottle in front of everyone. It's just so degrading.
It really is. And then there's the incident with the stolen sweatsuit. Sylvia took a sweatsuit to wear for gym class because Gertrude wouldn't buy her one, and for that, they held lit matches to her fingertips.
Burning became a common method of torture for them. They'd put out cigarettes on her skin. They'd throw scalding water on her. It was relentless. And some of this abuse was actually witnessed by their neighbors.
Wait, really? Like someone saw what was happening and didn't do anything?
Sadly, yeah. Phyllis and Raymond Vermillion moved in next door in August, and they actually saw some of the abuse firsthand. There was a barbecue they had, and Phyllis noticed that Sylvia had this huge black eye. And Paula just admitted to doing it right there in front of everyone. And then she threw boiling water on Sylvia's face.
Oh my God. Right in front of them. And Gertrude didn't stop her.
No, she actually seemed to think it was funny. And the Vermillions, they didn't report it.
That's just unfathomable.
And then there was another time when Phyllis went to the house and saw that Sylvia had swollen lips and another black eye, and Paula bragged about causing those injuries. And then she whipped Sylvia in the face with a belt right in front of Phyllis.
And again, no one reported. It's just mind-boggling how this could happen.
It really is. But sadly, the abuse just kept escalating. And things took an even darker turn in October when Sylvia wet the bed. Considering all the trauma she'd been through, particularly to her abdomen and groin, it's no surprise that she was having accidents.
Right. Plus, the psychological stress must have been immense.
Absolutely. But Gertrude's reaction was just horrific. She decided that Sylvia was too dirty to stay with the rest of the family, so she moved her down to the basement. She was basically locked down there with the dog.
Oh, God. And what were the conditions like in the basement?
It was a nightmare. Unfinished, filthy. Sylvia was kept naked all the time. There was no toilet, so she had to go to the bathroom on the floor. There wasn't even a bed. She was just sleeping in her own filth. And she was often tied up in really painful positions.
And what about food and water? Was she even being fed?
Barely.
Yeah.
Sometimes they wouldn't give her anything for days, and when they did give her food, it was awful, spoiled stuff from the garbage. Sometimes they made her eat feces to get a small amount of food. They even forced her to drink her own urine. It's just unimaginable.
It really is. And it wasn't just Gertrude and her kids anymore, right? There was Richard Hobbs.
Yeah, this kid, Richard Hobbs, he was about 14 years old at the time, and initially he was described as kind of a quiet, good kid. But once he started hanging out at the Baniszewski house, everything changed. He just became completely devoted to Gertrude and started taking part in the abuse.
And there were even rumors that their relationship might have been sexual in nature.
Yeah, some people have speculated about that, but there's no real evidence to support it. Whatever the nature of their relationship was, his involvement definitely marked a turning point in Sylvia's ordeal. The abuse became even more brutal and systematic.
Yeah, it's like it became almost ritualistic. They had these so-called cleansing rituals.
Yeah. Gertrude, Paula, and Richard, they would tie Sylvia up and drag her to the bathroom, and then they'd force her into a bathtub full of scalding hot water, and then they'd scrub her raw skin with salt.
God, that's just barbaric.
It was torture, and if Sylvia fainted from the pain, they'd bang her head against the wall to wake her up.
It's just unbelievable that this could happen. And you said earlier that there were some missed opportunities to save Sylvia. Can you talk more about those?
Yeah. A few weeks before Sylvia was locked in the basement, she ran into her older sister, Diana, at a park, and she told her about the abuse. At first, Diana didn't really believe her, but she went to the house to check on Sylvia.
And did Gertrude let her in?
No. She lied and said that Diana didn't have permission to visit and even threatened to call the police on her.
So close. What about Jenny? Did anyone try to talk to her?
Yeah, Diana saw Jenny at a park a couple weeks later, but Jenny was too scared to say anything. Gertrude had threatened to lock her in the basement with Sylvia if she told anyone about the abuse.
Oh, man. That's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So Jenny couldn't help her sister.
No, she was trapped too. But Diana did call social services and reported her concerns. Social services even went to the house, but Gertrude lied to them. She said that Sylvia had run away because she was a prostitute.
And they believed her.
Sadly, yes. They didn't investigate any further. And there was another incident. A boy named Michael Monroe reported to his high school that there was a girl at the Baniszewski house who was covered in sores. The school sent a nurse over, but Gertrude told the same lie about Sylvia being a prostitute, and nothing happened.
It's just failure after failure. No one helped her.
No. And by late October, Sylvia was in really bad shape. She was weak, she was covered in sores, and it seems like Gertrude briefly tried to make things better, or at least appear that way. She brought Sylvia upstairs and let her sleep in a bed. She and Stephanie even gave her a warm bath.
That almost sounds nice. Was it a genuine attempt to help her, or was it something else?
Well, it doesn't seem that way. After the bath, Gertrude made Sylvia write a letter to her parents.
What did the letter say?
It was a complete fabrication. Sylvia was forced to write that she'd run away with a group of boys and that those boys had abused her, and that she'd done it all to get back at Gertrude.
It sounds like Gertrude was trying to cover her tracks, make it seem like she had nothing to do with Sylvia's condition.
Exactly. And the handwriting in the letter, it was really neat, even though Sylvia was close to death at that point. It really shows how much control Gertrude had over her.
It's chilling. So
Yeah.
What was Gertrude's plan at this point?
She was going to get rid of Sylvia. She was going to take her to this place called Jimmy's Forest and just leave her there to die.
Oh, my God. And Sylvia overheard the plan, right?
She did, and she tried to escape, but she was too weak. She barely made it to the front door before they caught her.
So then what happened?
Gertrude just kept abusing her. When Sylvia refused to eat, she hit her in the mouth with a curtain rod and threw her back in the basement. She beat her again when she wouldn't eat crackers. And then the next day, she went after her with a chair.
With a chair.
Yeah. But she ended up hitting the wall and breaking the chair. And then she tried to use the paddle, but she accidentally hit herself in the face and gave herself a black eye. And then Coy Hubbard came in and beat Sylvia unconscious with a broomstick.
This is just relentless. It's impossible to even imagine what Sylvia must have been going through.
It's truly horrific. And even though she was dying, Sylvia was still trying to get help. She was banging on the basement floor with a shovel. She was screaming, but no one called the police.
No one.
No. And the next morning, Sylvia was basically incoherent. She couldn't even recite the alphabet. And that afternoon, everyone gathered in the basement. It was like they were there to watch her die.
Oh, my God, what happened?
Sylvia was lying on the floor, barely moving. Her arms were moving strangely, almost like she was trying to point at her abusers. She was mumbling names like Ricky and Gertie. She tried to eat a rotten pear, but she said her teeth were loose.
Oh, that's just awful.
Later that night, they brought a garden hose into the basement and sprayed her with cold water. And Sylvia, she tried to crawl up the stairs, but she couldn't make it, and that's when Gertrude stamped on her head.
Oh, God. And so that was it.
Well, she wasn't dead yet. Stephanie and Richard carried her upstairs and gave her another bath, a gentle one this time. They dressed her and laid her on the floor. And in her last moments, Sylvia said that she wanted her father and that she wanted to go home. And then she died.
It's almost too much to bear. And what happened after she died?
Well, Gertrude, it's like she didn't believe it at first. She actually hit Sylvia's body with a book and yelled, "Faker, faker!" But then, when it sunk in that Sylvia was really gone, she told Richard Hobbs to call the police.
Did she admit to what she'd done?
No. She told everyone to lie and say that Sylvia had run away with some boys, and she gave them the letter that Sylvia had been forced to write.
And did they stick to the story?
Jenny did at first, but as soon as Gertrude was out of earshot, she told the police everything.
Thank God she did. And what about the autopsy? What did that show?
It was horrific. They found over 150 separate injuries, burns, puncture wounds, bruises everywhere. There was nerve damage, muscle damage. She was so malnourished, dehydrated. Her fingernails were broken. She'd bitten through her own lips, and her skin was peeling off from the hot baths and the salt. She had open sores that were infected. And the official cause of death was a blood clot on the brain, caused by a blow to the head. But the shock and malnutrition were also major contributing factors.
So what happened to Gertrude and the others?
Gertrude was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Paula was convicted of second-degree murder and got 6 years. John Jr., Richard Hobbs, and Coy Hubbard, they were all convicted of manslaughter and got less than 2 years each.
Less than 2 years for what they did.
I know. It's hard to believe, but that's what happened. And Gertrude, well, she became a model prisoner and was actually paroled in 1985.
She got out of prison.
Yeah. And even after she was released, she never really took responsibility for what she did. She blamed her asthma medication, said she couldn't remember anything. She even blamed her daughters, Paula and John Jr. She died of lung cancer in 1990, still in denial.
It's just unbelievable. What about Jenny? What happened to her?
Jenny, she struggled for the rest of her life. She had anxiety. She had to be on medication, but she did get married and had kids of her own. She died of a heart attack in 2004.
This whole case is just so incredibly sad. It's hard to wrap your head around the level of cruelty that was inflicted on Sylvia Likens.
Yeah, it's a really disturbing case. It makes you wonder how people can be so cruel, especially to a child. And it also raises questions about how something like this could happen, how so many people could be involved, and how the system failed to protect Sylvia.
It's definitely a case that stays with you, and it makes you think about the importance of speaking up, of intervening when you see something wrong happening. You never know, you might just save a life.
You absolutely might.